Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at one of the stakes races on a stacked Saturday card at Belmont at the Big A slew of graded stakes events, including race 5, which is the Grade 1 Frizette Stakes. This a prep race for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And Craig, we've got a field of 6 signed on, and there's a lot of talent and potential in this field.
There is. I think it could go a lot of different directions in this race. We don't have a lot of running lines to base it on. Most of these horses are coming out of a maiden win, with one exception, I believe. But good, talented field.
Yeah, the number 2, Life Talk, is the one that I installed as the slight 9 to 5 morning line favorite. She's one of the few horses in this race that has prior experience going the 1 mile distance, but most of these will be stretching out to the mile route distance for the first time. Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector to get a sense of how these 2-year-old fillies might sort themselves out on the front end. And Craig, not a big surprise to see some of the horses that are stretching out from sprint races shown towards the front end on the Pace Projector, including the number 5, Just FYI, and the number 6, Emery.
Yeah, I don't put a whole lot of stock in pace projectors in races like this when most of the field is stretching out, but it gives you a rough idea of who showed more speed early on. And I have no arguments based on the early races where the horses are placed. I don't see any kind of flag indicating a fast pace or a slow pace, and that's what I'd expect because it looks like a pretty evenly matched field early as well as later on.
Yeah, the number 1, Irish Maxima, is drawn the rail, and she has been on the front end in both prior starts. So I could see her getting an aggressive ride from the inside, even though she's coming out of some slower paced races. And speaking of the number 1, Irish Maxima, let's take a look at her most recent start at Pimlico when she was a pretty easy gate to wire winner by nearly 7 lengths, drawing off from this field. She did get away with some moderate to slow fractions before opening up. And in her debut, she had shown some greenness. So nice to see her run a more professional race this past time, but she's got to answer the distance question, Craig.
She does, and she's got to answer the speed figure question as well. Her figures aren't quite as high as some of the others in here, but she did improve significantly second time out on the Timeform US scale. And with these lightly raced horses, it's always possible they're going to keep moving forward. She's stepping up in class, but I'm with you. I think she's going to go from that inside post.
Yeah, she is by first crop sire Maximus Mischief. We haven't seen too much of his progeny going route distances yet. There is plenty of pedigree on the dam side. The dam has produced a number of foals, including Mr. Ripple, who was a route winner on debut, also was fourth in the Grade 1 Florida Derby. So there is a little bit of route pedigree for this one to stretch out. The number 2 is Life Talk. Let's take a look at her most recent victory when she broke her maiden, going the same 1 mile distance that she'll encounter on Saturday at Aqueduct. And you had to like the turn of foot that this filly displayed at the top of the stretch as she takes over from the field. You can see her kind of lugging in a little bit at the 3/16 pole there, but Irod got her straightened out, and she just really draws off impressively, showing that she has no problem handling this distance.
Yeah, she was one who drew all kinds of eyes upon her debut when she had a lot of trouble sprinting and looked like a horse who was really going to appreciate more distance. And she certainly showed that going the 1 mile out of the Wilson chute at Saratoga, going back to the more straight one turn mile here at Belmont at the Big A. But there's certainly nothing to knock from that. And I think she's clearly the horse to beat based on her speed figure and just a visual of how easily she handled that stretch out.
And something you'd like to see with these 2-year-olds is that we've seen some positive runbacks from both of her races. A slew of horses have come back out of that debut race on July 30th and subsequently improved their speed figures, including her. And then last time, when she beat Backstretch Rose, that horse came back and narrowly lost at Aqueduct earlier last week. So just feels like a really valid race that this horse is coming out of. The number 3 is Princess Indy. We'll take a look at her most recent race, also going the 1 mile distance, this one around 2 turns at Monmouth when she was the winner of the sorority stakes. The problem, though, Craig, is that she's just a little slow on the speed figure scale. Even though this was also a stakes race, feels like this was a much weaker field than she was beating last time in New Jersey.
Yeah, she was the one horse I was mentioning that wasn't coming out of a maiden win. Winning a stakes race, the sorority is not what it was many years ago in stature, and her speed figures kind of show that. Has barely cracked the 80 mark in 3 starts, so she would not need just a jump, but a very big jump to be a contender here.
The number 4, Central Avenue, also needs a big speed figure jump to contend against this field, but I will say she did some things right and some things wrong on debut in that race at Colonial going 7 furlongs. She broke slowly, which is not something you want to see from a first time starter, but horses can get over that after doing it on debut. But I did like the way she traveled into the race after that. She looped the field on the outside, followed the eventual second place finisher into the race, and then finished up nicely to run past that foe at the end. I think that this filly showed some likable attributes, Craig, but she's just coming out of a very slow race, so she's got to get faster.
Yeah, the one caveat I would add for that race is that Colonial Downs runs very, very few dirt races. And often when they do run them, there's only one on the card. So if in the case of 2-year-olds making speed figures, it's very difficult. So if you like this horse, I wouldn't let that speed figure dissuade me too much from betting her, because it's just one where you do the best you can, but I don't have a whole lot of faith into it until we see a lot of runbacks.
Yeah, the runner-up Perfectly Wicked did come back to win, but did so with another pretty slow speed figure, so not really giving any clues to that maybe being a faster race. And even though there are blue color-coded fractions for that race in Timeform US, do note that the first and second place finishers closed from last and second to last, so it was a race where the pace fell apart. The number 5 is Just FYI. Let's take a look at her maiden victory on debut at Saratoga. And Craig, this is a filly where there was a little bit of buzz about her all summer long. She had worked in company with some other Belmont trainees leading up to this race, took some money when she actually made it to the starting gate, going off at 7-2 here in their typically loaded Saratoga 2-year-old maiden race. And she really does almost everything right. She broke about a half length slowly, but quickly got into the race after that, raced wide, and was just able to grind down another first time starter to get the job done.
She's a filly who, as you said, had a lot of buzz. You don't know if you often see Belmont first-time starters take that kind of money, and she lived up to it. Her speed figure's a little lighter than what we see from some others in here. She did get a decent pace to run into. All the fractions are coded in red in the Timeform USPPs, but I do like what I saw from her. It certainly seems like she'll be capable of handling the added distance, and I would expect a better speed figure from her here.
Yeah, she's a daughter of Justify with quite a bit of size to her, and there is pedigree to go longer. Her dam actually won going 1.3 miles on the turf and was even stakes placed going that distance on the grass, so definitely pedigree to stretch out for Just FYI. And then closing out the field is the number 6, Emery. She also won on debut at Saratoga. We'll take a look at that race here. She was racing over a muddy track, which I do think you want to note because unfortunately, once again, there is some rain predicted in the New York City area for this weekend, so we could be contesting this race over and off track. So nice to see that Emery did handle the circumstances. Craig, I did feel like maybe this wasn't the strongest maiden race that we ran at Saratoga from just a depth perspective, because it really was not a large field. It was pretty thin, but she did run a fairly fast speed figure. I do wonder if her running style, though, may have helped her that day, because it did feel like speed did pretty well on August 30th.
The big question for me is the track she ran over between the mud and one where there was plenty of speed winning on the day. Her speed figure certainly stacks up. I'm not going to be surprised if she wins well, runs well, but I just prefer others, as we're going to see when we get to our selections. I'm just always a little leery of romps in the mud. And as you note, she was 3-5. It didn't appear to be the strongest field, so I'm a little bit skeptical of this one.
Yeah, she is cross-entered in the Alcibiades on Friday, but it sounds like they are going to run her here instead, since it came up what seemed like a softer spot than that race. Let's throw up our picks for this Grade 1 Frizette. And Craig, we're both going for horses that broke their maidens at Saratoga, but you're going with the proven stamina of the number 2, Life Talk, and I agree, she's the one to beat.
Yeah, she's the one to beat. She's proven at the distance. I really liked her turn of foot. We will have to see what kind of pace she gets and if we get a fast track, but I just think this one has the most potential in the field and expect her to run a really big one on Saturday.
And I think Life Talk is very dangerous in here. I just put the number 5, Just FYI, on top. I liked her debut a lot, and she strikes me as one that is going to appreciate the added ground that she gets to work with on Saturday. So that's a look at the Grade 1 Frizette, the number 2, Life Talk for Craig, and the number 5, Just FYI for me. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.